Hey!
Feedback for things like volume control and charging. There's a dedicated glyph interface for controlling their behavior. And you can use the Composer app to create custom glyph patterns / ringtones. Now let's go over the display. It's a 6.7-inch 1080p OLED with a 120Hz refresh rate and Gorilla Glass 5 protection, nearly identical to the screen of the Nothing Phone 2. However, you don't get LTPO tech here, which means that the refresh rate switching is a lot less dynamic. You get a smooth 120Hz, which drops down to 60Hz when the phone is idling to save power.
HD Plus display that features an adaptive 30 to 120Hz refresh rate that has a peak brightness of 1300 nits. And the top half houses the glyph lighting, the cameras, and the NFC coil. I think this design looks to be the best out of the three phones. But again, I do think the white or milk color looks to be the best because you can see more of the transparent design on here. The black one, not so much. Now, since I've had the phone, I've actually received a total of 4 updates, and probably the most notable ones are these. Improvements in camera clarity and processing. Colors in both the main and ultra-wide cameras should now be much improved and looks more consistent. And also, the overall camera performance should be much snappier. Other big improvements are, optimizing the fingerprint reader. It's much snappier than before. The Wi-Fi and Bluetooth inconsistencies should be fixed now. And the overall smoothness and gaming performance on this phone has gotten better with less stutters or less frame drops. With that is the MediaTek Dimensity 7200 Pro and 12 gigs of RAM. So after all the updates that I've gotten on this phone, this honestly feels just as fast as the Phone 2. The only thing I will say is that sometimes things are just a little bit slower to process. Things like processing photos after each shot would take a few seconds instead of, happening right away. Performance or, higher fidelity games like Warzone Mobile or Genshin Impact, for example, won't be able to run at a constant 60 frames per second for more than an hour, or you can't run certain games at higher settings. But what I will say though is that the overall performance and software experience is just as good as flagships that cost 4 times the price. Knock them on that. It performs way better than the usual affordable Android devices and sometimes even perform just as good as flagships from years ago. So if you're a little worried that it's running a MediaTek chip, don't be. It's been a really great experience these past few months.
14. It's quite close to stock Android in functionality, but you get heavily customized aesthetics. These include custom-looking monochrome icons, pixelated fonts, and plenty of custom Nothing widgets too. You can even turn the whole interface monochrome, which is a Nothing sort of thing to do. There's interconnectivity and support for various Nothing earbuds through the Nothing X app. And for software support, the Nothing Phone 2 Way will get 3 years of software updates and 4 years of security patches down the line. The chipset of the phone is a customized variation of the MediaTek Dimensity 7200, called the 7200 Pro. The customization supposedly brings some extra power efficiency, but the details are scarce. Of course, it packs less punch than what you get on the original Nothing Phone 2 with a Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, but that's expected. In benchmarks, the Nothing Phone 2 Way doesn't exactly impress, but the CPU and GPU scores are decent and middle of the road for the mid-range class. In your day-to-day use, the Nothing Phone 2 Way is able to run smoothly with no obvious hiccups, stutters, or slowdowns. It's good for some casual gaming too.
All right, now let's talk cameras. Now, I just got to give you a $150 phone. Now, I've been shooting on this phone for weeks before it was announced in Barcelona, and while I agree, after the updates, shots have gotten dramatically better, I still think it's just okay. I think there's still some work to be done when it comes to white balance and HDR processing. Sometimes shots are looking a little too bright or highlights are just peaking, or sometimes the processing is just way off and things are looking a little too sharp or too saturated. I'm not sure if it's the ISP in the MediaTek chip that's causing all. When it comes to videos, it's pretty meh in my opinion. I think Nothing could work on its video processing just a little bit more and not just on this phone. I believe I said the same thing for the Phone 2. It's a little too sharp and needs work on its HDR. And so to wrap up this video for you guys, is the Nothing Phone 2A worth it? Honestly, it's the best $350 smartphone that you can buy. Not just because it has decent hardware and pretty awesome software updates, but the design is the best that you'll see at this price range. Now sure, you can
50 megapixel main cam on the back, together with a 50 megapixel ultra-wide cam. The setup isn't exactly the same as the noNothing Phone 2's. The camera sensors are different, and the ultra-wide cam here lacks autofocus. The 2A's main camera captures 12.5 megapixel photos due to pixel binning. Quality is solid, but not perfect. There's a good amount of fine detail in the frame, but also quite a bit of rather aggressive sharpening. Colors are on the saturated side, but look good. The dynamic range is good too. When it comes to people and faces, the main camera does pretty well. Skin tones come out looking nice and natural. While there's no dedicated telephoto cam, the 2x digital zoom from the main cam is nearly as good as the regular shots. In low light, the noNothing Phone 2A will use night mode processing automatically. The shots have plenty of detail in the frame and pretty low noise. Shadows are well developed, and so are highlights. Light sources are reasonably well contained, but could be better. The 4K video from the main camera looks pretty great. Detail is good, and there's practically no noise. Colors are a bit on the saturated side, and the dynamic range and contrast are good. All of the cameras have electronic stabilization enabled by default. On the main cam, you can notice some wobble. The main camera captures solid low-light videos, with plenty of detail and well-developed shadows and highlights. Some surfaces are a bit grainy, but it's nothing too severe. Like the main cam, the 50 megapixel ultra-wide cam also captures 12.5 megapixel stills. These are decent, with okay detail, colors, and dynamic range. In low light, the photos are again decent. The detail is good, and the dynamic range is surprisingly good, with well-developed shadows and highlights. The ultra-wide cam also does well with video capture. 4K clips have great detail for this sort of camera.